The format for this meeting is an interview with an alcoholic, the hot seat, inside the alcoholic studio. The speaker will be asked a series of questions that range from their personal story, the steps, relationship with God, and carrying the message. There are no right answers, just a fun and interesting way to share the speaker's personal insight. Our speaker for tonight is Claudio. Let's see here. Timekeeper. Please allow 90 seconds per question. The meeting may run slightly longer. Members, please feel free to leave if needed. Speaker, please say done when you have finished your answers, or please say pass on questions you would prefer to skip.
Sounds good.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's begin.
Let's do this.
Claudio, please generally describe, in your own words, our basic text, the book, Alcoholics Anonymous.
All right. In a general way, just to describe this, it is a text. The book is called Alcoholics Anonymous. I know throughout the rooms they sometimes refer to it as the big book, but it is named Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's where we get our program from. And inside this program, it's helped a lot of people. I know it talks about how many people have recovered, but this program has really, and this book, in this sense, has a lot of different suggestions to help you out when you need help with finding a way to stop drinking. And how do we get through this? And the whole process of it, but there's a lot of different answers in here. I think the more I read this book, the more it's discovered. So you learn more each time. So I'll pass next.
Are you an alcoholic? And if so, what makes you personally an alcoholic?
Before I came into the rooms, I didn't even know what an alcoholic was. I was just a drunk. It wasn't until I actually read this book that told me what an alcoholic was that I suffer from the physical allergy and the mental obsession. And I started reading this doctor's opinion, and it wasn't until I read that in this book that made me realize that I am an alcoholic. And today I could admit that as soon as I take that first drink, I can't stop. And so a lot of that was found in this book, and reading it, it really described what it was, and I can relate to it. So to me, that's just what the definition of alcoholic is for me. And am I one? Most definitely, I am an alcoholic.
What does the concept of anonymity mean to you?
At first, when I first came into the rooms, anonymity, I couldn't even pronounce the word. It was just one of those things. You hear anonymity and you see it. It's just like a lot of words in Alcoholics Anonymous. I wasn't this greatest reader. I wasn't a person who was educated in a sense who did that. So to read a lot of these words, I started realizing in 1935 they're just a lot different. The wording, the thing. So anonymity it's changed. And once I started really realizing what it is, it's important because it's just as far as anonymity goes, I started learning about we just don't break that. It's one of those things of Alcoholics Anonymous where you respect someone's wishes to not identify themselves or to talk about like out in public. We can talk a lot about the whole anonymity aspect of it on social media. Today's the big topic of do we break it or do we not? What do we do with anonymity? And it's very important, just to each person's own, to really look at themselves to identify they're an alcoholic. I think if you start looking at the history, where I used to hear they used to wear masks because a lot of people, their jobs, their careers, it could affect your career at times. And so it was just very, I don't want to say secretive, but it was just the thing of having respect for one another. And so throughout I think has it got changed throughout the years? I think so, as far as anonymity goes. But for me, until recently, I started breaking it at work and realizing how you can help someone else at work. So that's for me with anonymity.
Please give us a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit.
It was a lot of fun. That's for sure. A quick sketch. I took my first drink I skipped school and I was sitting at a stairwell with some cousins, and they gave me this 32 Miller High Life, and I took the drink, and something changed inside me. Then I looked at the bottle and it said Miller High Life, the champagne of beers, and at that moment I realized I was drinking the good stuff, right? And I wish I would have ended there, but from there on, I no longer chased a drink, I chased a drunk. And I've had over 1,000 DUIs, and that's something I always share. I got caught once. But from there, I have a lot of stories and pictures and different stuff. But eventually came to that point where I hit a physical, emotional, spiritual bottom. I couldn't do it no more. And when that time came, I needed help, and I realized. But it was fun drinking. I had a lot of good times, but it comes to a point where alcohol just doesn't. It becomes your master, I believe. And that was something my father told me. And I don't know if we'll get into that later, but he was a big part of me finding this program. So that's a little sketch. There's a lot of good stories and a lot of sad ones, but most importantly, I finally hit that bottom and brought me to these rooms.
Alcoholism is described in the book as a fatal illness. What does that mean to you?
Today, it means I can't drink no more. I've seen people die of this disease. It is a fatal illness. It's not one that will kill you right away. It's not one that you can. Oh yeah, you've seen people die of alcohol poisoning, but it kills that body. Little by little, it eventually takes you down and it starts destroying. That fatal illness will destroy your family, your friends, and a lot of people around you. Next thing you know, you're alone, and to live that lonely alcoholic life is not one that I want to live. And I was going down that path. That's something I was going down, but a fatal illness, it's true. I know I have another drink in me, but I don't know if I can do this program again. So to me, if I go out there, there's a good chance I won't come back. And there's just, that's what I say, but I don't want to mess around with that. But it kills. It kills. It kills slowly. But it is a fatal disease. You see people die in a lot of different ways, unfortunately. From car accidents, from drinking, to cirrhosis of the liver, just losing limbs, and just the jaundice. Like, all that stuff is just all because alcohol just wants to take our lives. So,
what are the conditions of your mind and body that accompany your alcoholism?
Can you read that question one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. What are the conditions of your mind and body that accompany your alcoholism?
I don't know. That's a deep question, really. I don't know. That one kind of stumped me in a sense, honestly.
We ask the hard-hitting questions here.
Yeah, and that's what it sounds like. Man. Just that body and the mind and of my body. Is that? I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking too much, and I just, like I said, I'm not this educated person, so it's getting me a little bit, honestly. One more time. Let's do it one more time.
One more time. Third time's a charm.
All right, let's do it.
All right, what are the conditions of your mind and body that accompany your alcoholism?
I think for me, now you start, I don't know, just thinking about that question of my mind and body, which accompanies that alcoholism is, it's when I put that drink in me. I know sometimes they say it's that thinking, but it's like, as soon as I put that first one in me, that's when that stuff starts kicking off, the lies, there's a lot of stuff that, I didn't realize that's what it was a phenomenon of craving. For me, personally, I guess that's the way I'm looking at it. That's always going to accompany me. Like, as soon as I put that little bit inside, it kicks off that little thing inside me that wants more. And that's something that I can never get rid of. I can tell you that right now. I can never get rid of that. That's always going to be with me. And I don't know if that's accompanying me or always going to be on me. But the phenomenon of craving is always connected to my hip, in a sense. That's the way I look at it. And as soon as I put that little one in me, it's off and running. So I probably didn't answer that question, but that's just the way I see it.
I think it answered that question perfectly. In your understanding, what is the role of a sponsor? Do you have a sponsor, and how often are you in contact?
The role of a sponsor really is to take you through these steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've had a few different experiences with sponsorship. I've had 3 sponsors. I currently do have a sponsor. I meet on a regular basis. We try to meet every Tuesday. He recently started a big book study at his house, and I go there on Thursdays. It's really changed my sobriety. It's accountable. it's important to have a sponsor. Sponsor's not there to be your Lyft driver. Sponsor's not there to fund you the money. I think the whole goal of a sponsor is to really help you through these steps, but help you build a relationship with the God, and in a matter of whatever it is works for you. I've gone through the steps 3 different times with the 3 different sponsors in different ways, but I think the role of a sponsor is to accompany you. And one of my first sponsors told me, he goes, my whole goal is for you to build a relationship with God. He goes, I will let you down one day. He goes, I'm a human. He goes, God would never let you down, but he goes, my whole role is to get you there. So I think it's important to find that sponsor to answer those questions, because I'm going to go through some stuff in sobriety. I think we all do. It might be at 1 year, it might be at 10 years, but at one point you're going to need that person. So I think a sponsor is something that's very vital, for sure.
How have your sponsorship needs changed from early sobriety until now?
I think the more we grow, and I relate my alcoholism and what I do in Alcoholics Anonymous a lot to my drinking. I think when you first come in, there's this buzz that's created when you drink. And you come into these rooms, the same thing, there's a buzz that happens. It's like, oh, okay. When I was out there drinking, I wanted to build my tolerance up, so I drank more, and I had to do this to build a tolerance up. Eventually, in Alcoholics Anonymous, you need to do more to build that tolerance up to get that same effect. The more I drank, the more I needed to chase that drink to get that effect. And I do that in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I came in, that first sponsor took me to meetings and hung out. And I went through those steps. And then a few years later, I hit this emotional bottom. And so I found another sponsor. And then that sponsor guided me through that path. And most recently, the sponsor I work with today, he really enhanced the service part of it. There's a lot of the legacies we talk about, the unity, service, and recovery, but there's a big part of service, and I think that's good about service. Now that I think about it, I have a service sponsor today, which is it's a whole different thing too, as far as service sponsor goes and get involved with general service. But that person, they've been vital. I went through some stuff this last year that I wanted to drink, and if it wasn't for that sponsor, who knows where I'd be today. But at first, it was just someone to get me going. But I started building a better relationship, and I started realizing how much more, in order for me to grow, I needed them. And I started getting more deeper. The more I guess I just wanted to learn more. And I think God just put those people in my life to help me out. So.
Have you completed the 12 steps? And if so, what is your suggested time frame for completing the steps?
All I could ever share is my experience. I completed the steps. It took me about a year to find that sponsor, maybe about a year and a half to 2 years, about a year and a half to complete the steps. After that, I went through the steps again. I went through them a little bit faster, and again, I went through them again recently, and I went through them faster. I can't share an experience to say if I do them in a week, what's going to happen. I don't know that. All I can say is do them as soon as you can. Get involved. Don't be afraid of it, and just do the steps. I wouldn't hesitate with it. I think we want to make sure we have those. Just start the work. I think it's important. But my experience, like I said, it took me a year and a half to complete the steps, and all I can ever share is my experience. I can't sit here in front of you and tell you, oh, you know what, I can do the steps, and I've heard people do the steps in 3 days. I've heard people do them in a day, and that's just not my experience. But if I was to tell people, do them as soon as possible, as soon as you can. I think today it's one of those things. When I went into a bar, I didn't wait 30 minutes to order a drink. I walked in there knowing what I wanted, and I went out there and got it. And I think sometimes we have to look at our same thing when we get into sobriety is the same thing, or into recovery, however you want to call it. It's like, you know what, you want to get that same feeling. Don't wait. Just get involved. Just get involved and do them.
In your own words, please describe steps 1, 2, and 3.
You know what? There's a lot of stuff I hear people say at times, like, I can't even think of how it goes now. Maybe I shouldn't be saying it. You know what? I'm just powerless over alcohol when it comes down to it. For that step one, it really is that I'm powerless over alcohol, and I came to believe. It's one of those things. I'm glad it says I came to believe. It didn't say I came to believe right away. I think the more I stay around this program, you just come to believe, and step three of making that decision. But I think that sometimes you hear I can't even think how it goes, and you might have to help me out with that one. It's like he can. I think I'll let him. And I remember people saying that, and then I heard a speaker one time said, he goes, "How dare you let God do it? Who do you think you are?" And it made me laugh, because it's like one of those things. I think I'll let him. Really? You think you'll let God do something? And at that point, it made me realize I can't do that. Like it really made me make that decision to be a part of God's life. Like who am I to say to I think I'll let him? He's always going to be there for me. But it's one of those things, those steps, 1, 2, and 3. They're very important. I think they're very important, and 3 especially is one that I think on a daily basis I have to really work at and look at, me personally. But I think it's just I'm powerless, and I need something, and that something's going to help me out, and I have to believe. And so that's good.
What does your unmanageability and self-will look like?
That unmanageability comes in a lot of forms and a lot of different ways, and a lot of it changes throughout your sobriety. But when you first come in, that unmanageability, sometimes it's not about that job. I think more for me, it's that unmanageability of having relationships. Like, how was I? Financially, I've always been hurting, even if I was drinking or not. I've always been unmanageable when it comes to money. But I think it was the relationship parts where they became unmanageable. The feelings with family, friends. All of a sudden, I stopped having them in my life. All of a sudden, I stopped not being around. I think that's what that unmanageability became. The longer I've been sober, I think I started realizing it's just my spirituality is unmanageable at times. It takes on a whole different meaning of the feelings and just the emotions. That's where it becomes unmanageable. I can't handle this stuff. I can't. Certain situations you're put into in life, that's where it's just unmanageable. There have been times, there's a lot of character defects I have, but again, a lot of that comes with the spirituality part. I think that's where, for me, what really comes down to them as far as unmanageability comes is that part, an aspect of it. But to a new person coming in, it really is just the relationships. I've always had a job, so it's like I used to look at myself, I'm a functional alcoholic. And, you know what I mean? I was just an alcoholic. It was an excuse to think I'm better than. And that self-will is just me doing it on my own, trying to figure it out. And I can't do it. Self-will, it's just one of those things I just can't.
What is your concept of a power greater than yourself, and how are you turning your will and your life over to it?
That concept has changed throughout my sobriety, and turned my will and my life over. At first, I needed to know what the will was, and I started thinking, like, what is that word will? And I remember listening to, I think it was Joe and Charlie talk, and they're just talking about a will. You go to this attorney, you have this will, you write it out, and he goes, that's your thoughts. And I was like, okay, I have to turn my thoughts over. And then what is life? Well, I turn my will and life over, and it's just the way my thoughts and my actions, and I have to turn that over. But there was a guy who we were one time talking about that, and he goes, you could turn your will and your life all over. And he was sharing a story about him and his sponsor, and they were talking about that third step. And he goes, why don't you go over there and pick up that, there was some dog poop on the floor, and he went and picked it up. He goes, go put it in your hand and pick it up. And he's, are you serious? He said, yeah. He goes, he picked it up, and he had it in his hand. He goes, now turn it over. And he goes, he turned his hand over. He goes, now let it go. And he goes, you know what, you could turn it over all you want, you're still going to have that crap in your hand, but until you let it go, it's not going to happen. And at that moment, it made me realize, like, I could turn it over all I want, but sometimes I have to let it go to God. And at least for me, that's when he shared that story with me, and I was just like, oh, it makes sense. I carry around so much crap, and at times I got to let it go. And I didn't physically go out and do it myself, but I was at an event the other day, and they had this kids game there, and it was like stepping on poop. And they had this mold of poop, and it made me realize, like, maybe I could start using that with people at times. but my concept of has changed, and I have this amazing God today that I enjoy. So, yeah.
Please briefly describe your experience with steps 4 and 5.
All right. 4 and 5. It's 4. It took a while for me to do it the first time. I think a lot of it was just scare and fear. And I went through it with a sponsor, and I talked about we have different sponsorship, and I think this last time I went through it with my sponsor, we actually went through it out of the book, the way it's outlined in the book. And I had to set some pride and ego with that because he asked me to do it, and then I told him, I was like, I've never did it out of the book. He said, how can you be sober almost 10 years and haven't did it that way? And I said, that's just the way my sponsorship went. That's just the way it was. And we finally did it out of that, and I had to have some pride and ego and humble myself and say, I've never done it that way. And in doing so, though, it made me look at the columns and do it that way, and it starts describing who you are. You start seeing what your patterns are. And then that 5th step of really letting go of a lot of stuff that's been inside me. At times, I sometimes think about it like you walk into an attic, and all of a sudden you turn the light on, you see all these cobwebs, you see all this stuff that's inside. And you need to clean that out. And once you start cleaning that out, it's like you start feeling a lot better. And those cobwebs get cleaned. And all of a sudden that person, all that stuff that's on you is not there no more. And a lot of that stuff with the 5th step weighed me down a lot. There's a lot of stuff with that 5th step just weighed me down of who I was, and I started really looking at it. So, but both of those have been very, very big in who I am today.
What does the exact nature of our wrongs mean to you?
It's one of those questions, I guess, you really have to think about these for a moment. And it's really just like, what did I do? I was like, how did the exact nature of our wrongs? Is that the question again?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exact nature of our wrongs.
Exact nature of our wrongs. Like, what did I do? Like, what exactly did I do? And I think it's really looking at your part. And I think it's just another way of saying this. Like, what's your part in all this? And sometimes that's the hardest thing to look at. This is my part in any situation I go through. It's a little easier to recognize it today than it was when I first came in, because it's always like, oh, it's your fault, or it's not on me. It's not on me. This is what happened. I was a victim. I did this. But today I really get to look at where's my part. And a lot of it comes from the 4th and 5th step of doing that work, where you start realizing what's going on. Why are you acting like this? What's happening? And so it's just really seeing my part in situations and stuff.
Please briefly describe, in your own words, steps 6 and 7.
6 and 7 are some of the steps that I really enjoy. I think it really made me realize of who I am today and how I'm wired. That's the way I look at 6. It really shows me how I'm wired. And 7 is one that I work on a regular basis. I think from 6, I realize I have these character defects. I understand that they're there. And at 7 is where I really have to ask God to help me out. I know when I'm about to do something. There's this instant gratification I want. And it doesn't matter. I'm going to go and I'm going to do it. I know the consequences, but I'm still going to do it because it's that instant gratification. But it's at that moment for me at 7 to humbly ask him, hey, help me out right now. I know I'm about to do this. I don't want to. Can you do something about it? Because I think that's what's with 6. You start realizing how you are as a person. But I think at 7, it's like you have to humbly ask him to remove this shortcoming. And it's like, I think I had to ask him at that moment. And there's times in my sobriety where I've asked God, it's like, help me out, because I'm about to do something that I know is not going to be good. I know what I'm doing, but I don't want to do it. And then there's times where I just don't do it. And it's like, oh, okay. But then there's times I go through it, and then you feel guilty, and you're just like, oh, man, I know I shouldn't have did this, or it was wrong. I love the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I always say at times I dislike them because it gave me a conscience. And I hate having a conscience today. And really 6 or 7 is where that conscience comes into play at times for me, because I know what's happening. So it's those are some steps that I just really enjoy. Not enjoy, but I like really looking at them and really talking about those steps.
What are some of your character defects, and are they being removed?
Oh, I'm lazy. I procrastinate. I'm a sloth in a sense. And Are they being removed? No. I try. I try. And I think that's, again, it's like helping out. I need to ask God for more help. And I wish I could sit here and tell you from my experience and say, oh, yeah, I did it, and it's all gone. I think I'd be this saint walking around, but that's just not who I am today. So procrastination is one of them. There's a lot of fear I have. Fear's in there. I don't know if you want to say lust or jealousy is just wanting that more. It's like at times I can see myself being that way. It's like I want what that person has. And it's just the material things aspect of it. That's part of the stuff that character defects I have. Then we just have that ego. The ego gets the best of us. I think the longer we stay around in sobriety, the more we think we know a lot. But really, I only know a little. I think at 2 years, I thought I just knew everything about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wanted to rewrite the big book. And it was just one of those things that I wanted to do. But today, I realize I only know a little. But those character defects, I think it is the procrastination or sloth. And there's that greed too. And it's not always about money. It's not the time. Like, you know what? I want my time. I want it all on mine. And there's just it's a good question to look at, because I think the character defects do we look at them? There's just so many. I think we can really talk about a long time. But it's just in a general way. I think that it's just really those 7 deadly sins we talk about. I think I struggle with them. And that little by little I'm getting better at it. And I think that's the thing I love about AA is that we get to get better and we just keep practicing. So,
please briefly describe steps 8 and 9.
8 and 9 is making that list. Right? We have to make that list of those people that we might have harmed, and then making those amends. And I think making those amends for me is when that really magic of Alcoholics Anonymous takes place, is to really go to somebody and say, you know what, this is what I did. How can I repay? What could I do for the way I acted? And we all have different experiences with making those amends. And one I'll share real quick is I went to go make amends to my brother. I owed him money, and there's a lot of different stuff. And I said, hey, bro, here's this money. I want to pay you back. He goes, I can't take your money. And I was like, no, man, it's not about you. It's something that I need to do for me. It's the program. And he told me, he goes, you know what? The program has changed your life or what you're doing, so I'll take your money. And then I just kind of told him, that's like, how can I repay you? And then he brings up something that I didn't even know about. He goes, you remember my wedding? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I followed you home that day. And I was like, what are you talking about? They put all the gifts. I don't know why they put all the gifts in. I was already drunk, but they put all the gifts inside my car. And I'm like, how dare them? And why did they do that? No one told them to. And I left. And I went, and my brother's like, yeah, I followed you through like 3 different drive-thrus. And I was like, what? I remember going through this stuff, and and I started thinking, it was my brother's wedding. And him and his wife, they just got married. And they followed me all the way until I got to their house. And that's stuff that I didn't even know. But making these amends, it came out. And at that moment, it made me realize, like, some of the stuff we do that people don't even tell us, we don't even know. But it made me realize, like, what a selfish and self-centered person I am. But making those amends, it freed and I built a relationship. 'Cause it's not always about them, and sometimes it's about me. And I need to clean my side of the street. And I need to clean what I've done. And if I don't, there's a good chance I'll go out and drink again if I don't do that.
Why is it important for you to straighten out your past?
Again, it's one of those things of being able to walk around with your head held high and become a member of society. I think it's important to our past. Yeah, our past mixes up who we are, but I still think we get to repair those relationships. And I think that's what it comes to. In the big book, it starts talking about like that tornado that whips through, and that guy comes, hey, Ma, everything seems all right. And then again, it's just because we stop drinking doesn't mean anything. We have to do to repair it. Just like if that tornado came ripping through, you rebuild that house, you build that foundation, you rebuild that stuff. And I think that's the same thing with repairing our past. It's like I get to repair that, and today, by me being sober, I get my family back, I get my nieces and nephews back, I get to be a member of a family again, and I think that's important. Because that's the first people we destroy is the family. And today, I have a wonderful relationship. Now, does that happen for everybody? No. Unfortunately, no. I've heard people, they've done some damage, and it doesn't happen. But a lot of people I've heard, but my experience is I've had, I got to repair those relationships with my family, and today I get to be there for them, and it's nice. It's nice to be there for family today, but I think it's important because I can't do this, and I need to repair that stuff in life. Because if not, I can't walk around, and I love walking around free today. So, yeah.
When you were actively drinking, did you drink whiskey in your milk?
No, I've never drank whiskey in my milk. It's something I really thought about, and we were talking about it in a meeting the other day. It's just like, I don't know about that one. But there's a lot of other different things we drink, and that just wasn't, so it never crossed my mind to drink whiskey in a milk.
Please briefly describe your experience with steps 10 and 11.
10 and 11 is for sure one that I need to grow in a sense. I'm not a writer. I'm just a person who hasn't never really writes. It's one of the things I try to do more often and write, and because I know they continue to do this inventory, and sometimes the way I gauge is one of the cool things. One of the cool gifts I've received in Alcoholics Anonymous is sleep. The gift of sleep is amazing today, where I can actually put my head down and 30 seconds I'm out. And when I can't do that, I know there's something wrong. There's a lot of thoughts going on. And I'm not saying I live this perfect life and always fall asleep right away, but it's just for me, that's where I kind of gauge that 10. And 11, that meditation is something that's popping up. It's popped up a lot, and I've had a lot of different experiences, but what is meditation? I think the whole thing is to have that conscious contact with God. It doesn't say exactly how to do it. Yeah, it has meditation, and in the book it gives an outline, but I think for me, sometimes it's just driving. I love driving, and I get into this conscious contact. That's where I get this God at. And some people do it through walking. Some people, I sometimes go music. I love music, and so sometimes I have to just listen to music, and that's where I build that conscious contact with God. But as far, like sometimes we looked at meditation, I used to think I'm doing it wrong. I don't do yoga, and then all of a sudden I was like, man, I don't have the body to bend like yoga, so I'm doing it wrong. And I used to compare myself to other people's zone out for 20 minutes, and that's just not me. But then I realized, just like everyone has their own understanding of God, I think everyone has their own understanding of meditation. But I think the most important thing is to pray and to build a conscious contact. So however you do it, and what works for you, just keep doing it.
Please briefly describe step 12.
Step 12, practices, principles, and all our affairs. That's stuff we learn, and we get to. I think a lot of the principle behind that is service. I guess we get to give it away, and it's huge. It's huge to just get into our lives and to what we get to do. And I think this is where I did the steps, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna get to 12, and I'm gonna have this experience, and it didn't happen. I just kept going, and then little by little, I started realizing what it was all about. And it really is just not carrying the message just to alcoholics, but it's in our lives. This is where we start taking what we've learned. All these principles, these steps have principles behind them, and we start getting into them, and we start practicing it outside these rooms. But we really have to just. I had an experience with these steps. There was something that happened, and I just learned to give it away. And a lot of it is through service. And there's lots of different ways to do service. That's just carrying the message of what we do. And what is the message? It's the steps. That's really the message of how we get about doing this. How are we going to find this God who's going to help us out? Because without that, I don't know where I'd be today. So,
can you please share with us a spiritual experience you have had as the result of these steps?
There's tons of spiritual experience I've had. And I think, again, it's doing these steps, and as we do these steps, I think that's when God reveals himself in different ways. One of them, which one should I touch on? There's so many. All right, this one, it might be a little longer than 90 seconds, and I'm just going to put it out there and get a little... Anyways, so I went to a conference. I do a lot of young people's conference, but I went to a conference in New Orleans. It was called CircuitPaul, which is the Southeast Region Conference of Young People in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went out to this conference, and I had friends that I met at another conference, and they said, you want to come speak on a panel? And I'm like, oh, wow, they want me to speak on a panel? Yeah, I'll fly out there. I'll go out there and do it. It's just one of those things. I just want to go and just do it because God got me, and so God's going to take care of me. Sometimes it's a responsibility of like, unmanageability, here we go. And so I flew out there, and I went out there, and I only had $100 on me for like 4 days in New Orleans. It's like, what am I supposed to eat? How am I supposed to get around? And luckily, this conference, and we're in the South, and they have a lot of hospitality, a lot of good food and stuff. Anyways, they did a state roll call, and I said, I'm from California. And I was the only one who stood up. And this lady comes up to me, and she says, oh, you're from California? And I said, yes. She goes, what part? And I said, Sacramento. And she goes, oh, okay. And she goes, were you at Acupol? And I was like, oh, that's the All California Young People Conference. And I said, yeah, I was there. And she says, you're the one. And I was like, what do you mean I'm the one? I didn't hook up with nobody. You know what? I don't even know what she was talking about. You're the one. And she goes on to tell me that her daughter was part of the host committee for that conference. And she says, do you DJ? And I said, I play music. She goes, you are the one. And she went on to tell me that her daughter was going through a lot of health issues and that she was going to step down from the committee. But she says she talked to me, and she asked me, she goes, after she had a conversation with me, that she stayed on the committee. And she said, because the money that they wanted to pay me, I said, just take that and give it to Newcomers for them to get in. And she goes, she was having a difficult time with everyone else, but when she talked to you, she stayed on part of that committee, and if it wasn't for you, she would have dropped it. And it made me realize, like, I'm in New Orleans, and this is where the message was given to me. It was just a spiritual experience. And after that, she's like, hey, you know what? I just bought a house. I got a guest room. You could come stay. I said, I needed a place to stay Sunday night. I'll take you to the airport. And it was at that moment, again, it was just like, we do this work, God will reveal to it. And it was just an experience that I was just like, wow, like, I had to come to New Orleans to get it, when it's just one of those moments where I'm like, all right, God, it was an amazing experience. But that's just but a lot of it came from the steps of learning all that stuff and doing this work. This is where we get to do it. So
that's awesome. What is the message of AA, and why is it important to carry this message?
There's a lot of messages. I guess you can look at AA, and I think for me it comes down to love and service. For me, that is the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. We learn to give this away, and we do it in a way with compassion and love for another alcoholic. It's tough. I mean, there's a lot of different messages, but for me, that's what it comes down to. It's love and service. I talked about the buzz we get from drinking. There's a buzz that happens in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I love the effect it produces. And from there, I chase it. But when it comes down to it, as one alcoholic talking to another, giving this away, and it's just through love.
What are some of the principles you are practicing in your affairs today?
One is service. That is a principle that I practice a lot. Honesty is another one. I think faith is, at times I feel like I'm struggling with it, but I practice because I know that's what it is. I think another principle that I practice, and I try to practice, is just that brotherly love. It's one of those things. I know we're going to go through our rights and wrongs, and we're going to do something, but have some compassion and love for somebody it's huge today. And a lot of that I learned through Alcoholics Anonymous. But if there's the one that I practice the most today is service. I love in the book it talks about we're going to have a new employer, being all powerful. He'll provide what we need, just as long as I stay close to him and perform his work well. And I try to do that on a regular basis. And at times I don't want to do it, and I'm afraid of where he's taking me. But he's really never let me down. It's just I'm afraid to take the responsibilities he's giving me. And so I'm getting there, but it is service is really a principle I try to practice.
Why is it important to put the welfare of others ahead of your own?
I think a lot of that comes down to that first tradition we talk about. It's like, I can't do this without someone else. I can't do it on my own. I need the unity that's part of it. I need to put it first. Because if I don't put that first, who am I going to be? And I think in society today, that's where I've become. It's like I need to help someone else and see where it is. I'm selfish and self-centered to the core. Straight off the back, I am selfish and self-centered, and that's the way I get. But I think putting the welfare of someone else, it takes a lot to do that. Do I do it all the time? No. But I try. I really do try. I think a lot of that comes to family. There's a lot of times where throughout my sobriety that's changed. It's the welfare of others. Like I really need to put someone else before me. And yeah, there's a lot of experiences, like I said, that I've been through or that's happened, and it's again, it's God showing up. But yeah.
How do you determine or gauge the quality of your sobriety in AA?
Again, I think it's that sleep for me. It really comes down to. There's other ways it is. Am I able to go to rooms? And what I mean by that is like that home group, the business meeting. Am I having resentments? The more I've done the steps, I continue to do the steps, and the more resentments I had against people in Alcoholics Anonymous. Is it because of a business meeting? Is it because of the way they act? And but the way I gauge it is really it's more of a spiritual thing of how I'm feeling. It's that it's really looking at myself as I'm going to meetings, because there are some people. I'm not gonna like everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's something that I not everyone's gonna like me. I know that for a fact. I have respect for people, but there's just times where someone's bugging me and something's happening, and it's like, I guess that's that gauge that goes off. It's like, hey, you need to do something. So I guess it's on a meeting by meeting basis or committee meeting by committee meeting. I don't know. It's just one of those things that I guess after doing these steps, you know when you're off. Like something's up, I guess.
Why do you think alcoholics relapse?
I've never relapsed, so I really can't say why they do. That's something that I've never had that experience to say, oh, this is what happened. I hear things, but I can't share that experience. That's the honest truth. I can't tell you, okay, it's meetings or it's this. But I think for me, I think the conscious contact with God is where it's at. Because there's been times in my sobriety where it hasn't been there, and then all of a sudden that thought of drinking comes into play, and I just can't. There's nothing I can say about that because I've never relapsed. I've never had to do that. I said, I'm gonna give AA one chance and one chance only, and I'm gonna do everything they ask. If I go out and drink, I'm never gonna come back. But I haven't seen it to go out and drink. I just continue to do that. So why they do it, I just I couldn't answer that. I think that's for someone who's had that experience I just never had.
Are you willing and able to sponsor other members currently?
Yes, I've always been willing to sponsor. That's one of those things. Is sponsorship for everybody? I don't know. I think people have a niche. I think just like any position in Alcoholics Anonymous, people have a niche, the service work they do. You have some people that are just good coffee makers. They know how to make the best coffee. You have people that are good secretary people. You have people that are just like sponsor machines. I don't even know how they do it. They have like 16 sponsees. And they have H&I and general service. And it's like find your niche in Alcoholics Anonymous. Am I willing to sponsor people all the time? Have I taken someone through the steps fully? No, I haven't. Am I currently sponsoring someone right now? I am not. Have I done it in the past? I put my hand out always. And at times that sponsorship can get hard at times, especially when I was new, because I'm like, I'm willing to do it, but nobody wants what I have. And then I see someone else who, I'm like, that person's doing that? Like, how does he have 3 sponsees and I can't even get one? And again, I'm just comparing myself to others. I'm not going to say it's all God has it set up and that's it, but now I'm always active. And is there ways for me to go find people? I think so. And I think I'm reaching a point where maybe I just start doing that, where I just start sponsoring. But I do service in other ways, in different things. But services, sponsorship is important, and am I currently doing it right now with taking someone through the steps now?
Presently, what is the most important activity in your recovery program?
Right now, for me, the most important, or what I'm doing the most of, is general service work right now. In general service of being a GSR, I have a DCM commitment, which is the district committee member of a district. I got involved with that. It really opened my eyes to what is Alcoholics Anonymous, how it, not necessarily how it functions, but what the role it plays, and how important it is to have a general service representative in your group. And so the last year I became the DCM, and it's opened me up and going to different assemblies. And I was doing that. I was general secretary for the El Grow Fellowship last year, which took a lot of my time. The year before that, I was doing a lot of young people, and I was involved with a lot of young people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was a whole different journey. But presently, right now, it's the service and general service. It's been an amazing experience. The people I've gotten to meet from all different areas, to experience PRASA in Reno, and to see what Alcoholics Anonymous is happening, what's going on, the different literature that's coming out, the different pamphlets, how we have a voice. And as a district committee member, a DCM, I get to just put that enthusiasm and open the eyes to other people. So presently, right now, a lot of service I'm doing is in general service.
Would you please generally describe the purpose of the 12 traditions in Alcoholics Anonymous?
One of them, for the 12 traditions, is it's for the group in a sense. It really is to function, to keep that unity amongst it. I know when Bill and Bob, when they put these all together, a lot of it was Bill who did a lot of this work. The traditions were, for us, there's a lot that happens in AA, and we want to change a lot of different things. But each tradition has its principle behind it, what it's about, the unity of the group conscience, of how important it is as a group to maintain it. Because if not, we get crazy around here. And they're not laws, they're just suggestions to do it. But to hear some of the history that came about it, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. But I think it keeps... the same way the individual uses the steps for their inventory and their recovery, the traditions are there for the group. And the group to look at and to see, okay, are we doing this stuff? So the more I get into general service and the traditions and the concepts, you start realizing how important they are. And especially for me is that tradition one. Unity's huge, because without everyone else, and I wouldn't be here. And so I've learned that I can't talk about another group, and I can't say this group's bad. And there's been instances in my sobriety where someone's like, you don't want to go to that meeting because of this, and you don't want to go to that. So I didn't go to that meeting for like 6 years. Then I finally went to the meeting. I'm like, that means nothing. And again, that's just what happens. And it's just, and unfortunately, it's just in AA, it just becomes this group and that group. But it's just like, no, if we're not all together, we're eventually going to break apart. So, but the traditions are there for, a lot of it's for the group.
Can you give us some examples of meeting etiquette?
You know what? There's a thing about AA meetings is each group's autonomous, and each group can do and function how they want. The etiquette of a meeting, it varies. It really depends on where you're at. I've been involved with young people's meetings where they do a lot of chanting during the readings, and that's just what the group does. There's a lot of talking going on, and there's a lot of movement. Is there any specific meeting that's right or wrong? I don't know. I think it's really finding what works for you. Is the standard. I don't know. I guess it just depends on the group you're at and what they do there. Every time I go to a meeting or even speak at a meeting, I ask, what do you guys do here? Some people stand when you speak. Some people sit. I don't know. A lot of people in the Bay Area, they go, we stand when we share. And I'm like, okay, I'll stand. I don't know if that's the etiquette you want. There's places where they says you can't get up during the meeting, when people are talking, the speaker's going on. It's like, okay, or we put the coffee away. All right, so we don't do that and get up. We don't use the restrooms. Put the cell phones away, and there's a lot that happens. I can't say, well, this is specifically where it goes about, because I'm not gonna lie, I've been in some of these young people. I shouldn't say young people. They're just meetings where they chant, and I've chanted, and it's like, oh, it's pretty funny. I laughed, and like, what am I supposed to do? Like, it's just that's just the way the meeting goes. So I think it's just each group's autonomous. So as far as meeting etiquette goes, you do you. I don't know.
What role models do you have in sobriety?
It's hard to say that word role models, because we put people up on pedestals, and in a sense, when I first got sober, there's this lady, Miss, and I know her anonymity, and that's just where she went by. But when I first got sober, she's all Clyde, because I went by Clyde when I first came into these rooms. It wasn't Claudio, so it was about 3 years sober before I got into going by Claudio, but I went by Clyde, and she's like, Clyde, we don't put people up on pedestals. We're all alcoholics, and that's just the way we are. And so it always stuck with me. And she told me instances and of stories of why and what happened and where she was at. So I kind of got the gist of what she was saying. But there are people we look at so what they do in their program, and you see the way they are. I think the longer we stay around in Alcoholics Anonymous, the more God expresses and shows us, like, hey, this is where you can go. And then in doing so, you get to meet those people. And sometimes you go to a meeting and you see somebody, and it's the way they carry themselves, or the way people talk to them, or they walk in, there's a presence about them, and you're like, what are they doing? And just like, okay, I want to be that way. And during the break, you talk about role models. There was just a story I was sharing about a person who, when I first saw her, I looked up to her. She was doing a lot of young people, and I was like, oh, I want to be like her, or you want to see that. And it came to that point where I started being that person and getting to know her. And but unfortunately, situations happen in lives, and it goes that direction. But I think it's just depending on where you're at in your sobriety, I think God puts those people in your life just to, I guess we look up to them, we just follow them. I think role model, it can go a lot of different ways. So.
What advice do you have for newcomers in AA?
I don't know. I don't know if it's advice, but I think it's something that's worked for the way I look at it. And there's a lot of analogies I look at in Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of them for me is when I go to a body of water, I go to a pool or any kind of water, I put my foot in, right? I test the water. Oh, is it cold? I put my foot in. Oh, okay, it's a little bit cold. Or maybe I get in a little bit further. Oh, okay, it's not that bad. And then you just do that cannonball and you just jump in. And once you do the cannonball, all of a sudden you start getting used to it and you start trading water and you're just sitting there and it's like, it's not that bad. It's the same thing with Alcoholics Anonymous. You're going to get in. It's like, oh, you're going to test AA. You know what? Just do the cannonball into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. We got you. It might take a little while, but you'll get used to it. It's going to start feeling better, and then all of a sudden you start feeling a part of. And the next thing you know, you start building that fellowship, and it's like, hey, I can do this. So it's one of those things. Just do the cannonball into Alcoholics Anonymous. We got you. We can get the sponsors, and we can say all these things. But really, it's just the same way I did my drinking. I just, go for it. People used to tell me, hey, drink this and try this, and I would just do it. They're going to give me that solution. It's going to give me that phenomenon of craving I want, so I'm going to do this. Sometimes you have to do that with Alcoholics Anonymous. You know what? Let's just follow that suggestion. And again, they're going to give me that solution. So,
what advice do you have for old-timers in AA?
I think sometimes I can't forget where I come from. And I have to understand what it is for a newcomer. Recently, I was at a meeting. I spoke at a meeting, and this girl comes up to me afterwards, and we start talking, and then her name was Megan, and Megan's like, yeah, would you be my AA buddy? And I was like, what? Okay, whatever, we're AA buddies. And then I start trying to tell her, oh, you need to go to this meeting, and you know what, go to this meeting and call this person. And I'm telling her the way it was, what I'm doing today. And then she just told me, can I just stay here at this group? And I'm like, yes, you can. You can just go ahead and stay there at that group. And because I was just trying to tell her, you need to expand this, you need to go meet these people. But then I had to realize, like, how was I when I first came in? I needed to go to that one meeting and just be there constantly, and that's what I did. I went to that same meeting, I made those friends, and again, we forget where we come from. We forget what it's like for a newcomer, and the more time I get around, the more I realize I'm getting away from why I'm here. But I think it's, again, don't forget where you come from, and it's, I might have the experience, I might have all this knowledge, but not everyone does, and I have to be mindful that they're just not there yet, and I get to share with them what I went through, but in a sense, it's just share your experience, and don't forget where you come from.
Last question. You ready? Can you please describe what this experience was like?
It's nice. I think the interview process really gets you thinking about your life or where you're at in your sobriety. Am I doing it right? I'm going to leave here and going, oh man, I didn't even think about that. Like, where are we at? It gets straight to the point of little things that I guess maybe I need to do some writing. Maybe I need to do this on a regular basis, or where am I at in my service, or where am I at in these steps, and are there any steps more difficult than others? But I've really enjoyed this experience. I will come back out here to see it, to be a part of. I think it's important, just the whole being recorded, being a podcast, and seeing it that manner. We get to touch lives, and I think that's one of the things with Alcoholics Anonymous is we're growing, and it talks about the digital age, and who would have thought that we'd be sitting here in a podcast and it's snowing outside, and I lost it when I was coming to this meeting. I'm like, where am I going? And is there another exit? And I'm heading to Tahoe, and I'm like, okay. And I had a lot of experiences driving up 50 that way, and it just brought me back. And I'm like, it's snowing. What am I going to do? Am I going to make it on time? But I think that's I've enjoyed this experience, and I hope it grows from here. It really does make you, for me personally, just evaluate where I'm at today, which is good. Again, it's a reminder that we constantly have to do this work. And if we don't do this work, we get away for me personally, I get away from my God. But today, coming out here, I'm sure I'm going to meet some new friends. And so I'm just excited to be out here. And if you're listening to this and you're wondering if you are an alcoholic, this is just my experience. It's this is what I've done. It's changed my life. And I hope what I say or someone else says, it changes your life. And we realize the impact we have on others' lives. Just by sharing my experience, we get to impact people's lives today. And it's a gift at times, and it's a responsibility today. But I'm glad I get to be here today sharing it with you guys. So,
all right. Thank you, Claudio. From the old preamble, I wish to remind you that whatever is said at this meeting expresses our own individual opinion as of today and as of up to this moment. We do not speak for AA as a whole, and you are free to agree or disagree as you see fit. In fact, it is suggested that you pay no attention to anything which might not be reconciled with what is in the AA Big Book. If you don't have a Big Book, it's time you bought one. Read it, study it, live with it, loan it, scatter it, and then learn from it what it means to be an AA.